The day I bought 40 acres just to spite my HOA president, I never imagined she'd spiral so hard she'd end up in handcuffs on my security cam. So there I am, lounging in my wildflower meadow, honeysuckle sweetness mixing with fresh-cut grass, birds singing, when her white BMW comes roaring up like a missile. My steel gate slams shut with a glorious clang that echoes across the valley, electronic lock sealed tight. She's pounding the horn, face purple as a bruised plum, shrieking, "You can't do this to me!" Here's the twist that absolutely broke her brain. This land sits completely outside her HOA empire. Zero jurisdiction. Pure kryptonite to a control freak like Dolly. 6 months later, I'm sipping my morning coffee, replaying the sweet footage of deputies hauling her off my property for trespassing. Ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA dictator who thought they owned your soul? Drop your city below and spill the tea. I'm collecting the wildest neighbor war stories. Okay, before I get ahead of myself, you need to understand how this whole disaster kicked off. My name's Marcus Remy, I'm 45, and 6 months ago, I was just another divorced guy trying to piece his life back together. After my marriage exploded, thanks to a cheating ex-wife who decided our financial advisor was better husband material, I needed somewhere peaceful to rebuild. Working remotely as a software engineer meant I could live anywhere, so I picked what looked like suburban paradise. Willowbrook Estates. The name alone should have been a warning sign. Any place that calls itself an estate when it's really just cookie-cutter houses is probably run by people with delusions of grandeur. But the 3-bedroom ranch I bought had good bones. A corner lot perfect for escaping nosy neighbors, and came with the promise of a vibrant community. The smell of fresh paint still lingered when I moved in, mixing with the hopeful scent of possibility and maybe some decent tomato plants in my future. Then I met the queen bee herself, Dolores Dolly Pemberton. Picture a 52-year-old woman who drives a pristine white BMW with the license plate HOA1. Yes, she actually had that custom made, and carries an iPad like it's Excalibur. She's been HOA president for 8 straight years, which should have sent me running faster than a tourist in Times Square. Her husband Roger shuffles behind her like a kicked puppy, constantly apologizing for her behavior to anyone within earshot. The harassment started in week 3. I'm unpacking, savoring my first peaceful morning coffee when aggressive knocking rattles my door. There's Dolly, iPad gleaming in the sunlight, ready to welcome me to the neighborhood with all the warmth of a tax audit. "Your mailbox is non-compliant," she announces without even saying hello. The click, click, click of her stylus against the screen sounds like a tiny machine gun. "Black is unauthorized, forest green only. That's a $150 fine plus mandatory correction." Here's the beautiful irony. That mailbox came with the house. The previous owner confirmed the HOA approved it in 2019, but facts don't matter to someone drunk on petty power. Knowledge nugget. Most HOA violations require a formal hearing before fines can be imposed. Check your state's laws because many HOAs skip this step, hoping you won't fight back. The violations multiplied like rabbits. My work van in my own driveway, commercial vehicle prohibition, $300. The garden gnome my daughter gave me, aesthetic violation, $500. Security cameras after a neighbor got robbed, atmosphere of suspicion, another $500. But the real breaking point came during my housewarming BBQ. 15 neighbors Saturday afternoon, perfectly reasonable gathering. The charcoal was smoking beautifully, kids giggling in the backyard, and for the first time since my divorce, I felt human again. That's when Dolly descended like a plague locust. She strutted onto my patio uninvited, armed with a measuring tape and professional noise meter. Her stilettos click-clacked against my concrete like a death march, while that suffocating lavender perfume, probably costs more than my car payment, mixed with the smell of grilling burgers in the most stomach-turning way possible. "This exceeds maximum assembly parameters," she declared loud enough to embarrass me in front of everyone. Noise levels approaching violation threshold, 30 minutes to disperse, or I contact authorities. It was 3 p.m. on Saturday. My music barely registered over normal conversation. But there she stood, stopwatch ready, taking notes while my guests suddenly remembered urgent appointments elsewhere. The humiliation tasted worse than burnt meat. Watching good neighbors, people who'd brought potato salad and friendship, slink away because they feared Dolly's wrath. That's when something hardened inside me. That night, listening to crickets where laughter should have been, staring at leftover burgers nobody got to eat, I made a decision that would change everything. Time to show little Miss HOA what happens when you pick on the wrong software engineer. 2 weeks after the BBQ humiliation, Dolly went nuclear with a certified letter that made my divorce papers look friendly. The envelope arrived Tuesday morning, thick as a brick and twice as intimidating, with that green certified mail sticker screaming, "Your life is about to get complicated." I signed for it in my Batman pajamas, coffee steam curling in the crisp air, completely unprepared for the legal haymaker inside. Notice of intent to file property lien blazed across the top in angry red letters. Dolly claimed I owed $2,400 in fines plus $800 in administrative fees. Creative accounting that would impress a cartel money launderer. 30 days to pay or face a lien that could block any future home sale. The language was pure intimidation. Foreclosure proceedings, reasonable attorney fees, all designed to make normal people panic and write checks. But software engineers aren't normal people. We debug systems for a living, and this system reeked of corrupt code. 3 sleepless nights later, fueled by spite and enough coffee to kill a horse, I dissected every line of HOA bylaws and state property law. My dining room table looked like a legal war room, covered in highlighted documents and post-it notes mapping Dolly's violations. Turns out she'd skipped mandatory hearings, exceeded legal fine limits, and invented fees with no bylaw basis. I'd learned years ago from a property law class that agricultural zoning usually overrides residential restrictions, knowledge that was about to become very relevant. Even better, I found 3 other victims. Mrs. Patterson got hit for $900 in excessive bird feeding violations. The Johnsons faced $1,200 for playground equipment that disrupted neighborhood aesthetics. All targeted, all excessive, all following Dolly's harassment playbook. While building my legal defense, I was also browsing property maps online, partly for research, partly because geographic data soothes my analytical brain. That's when I spotted something beautiful. 40 acres of agricultural land directly adjacent to our subdivision, completely outside Dolly's jurisdiction. The property belonged to Ezra Whitfield, whose family had farmed that land since the Eisenhower administration. I'd seen the old man at Murphy's Diner, always in the same corner booth, methodically working through apple pie while reading obituaries. Thursday morning found me sliding into the booth across from Ezra, the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee mixing with opportunity. His weathered hands wrapped around a ceramic mug that had probably seen more conversations than a therapist's office. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm Marcus Remy, your new neighbor in Willowbrook. Mind if I sit?" Turns out, Ezra was desperate to sell. Developers had been circling like vultures for months, making insulting lowball offers, hoping to pressure him into submission. He wanted out. Florida called with promises of his daughter's cooking and grandkids' laughter, but he refused to let his family's legacy become another strip mall. "Those subdivision folks," he said, stirring sugar with deliberate precision, "they see my land like it's just empty space waiting for more McMansions. You seem different, son." I offered $180,000. Fair market value that respected both his need and my budget. We shook hands over pie crumbs and morning coffee, sealing the deal with old-school honor that corporate sharks couldn't understand. The closing happened at light speed. Cash deal, no financing headaches, paperwork flowing smoother than Ezra's coffee. Within a week, I held the deed to 40 acres of pure freedom, land that would make Dolly's head explode. She found out through her real estate spy network faster than gossip spreads at a church potluck. Thursday evening, she materialized at my door like a vengeful spirit, face flushed redder than a lobster dinner. "You can't just buy land to spite the HOA," she shrieked, voice climbing toward frequencies that probably confused nearby dogs. "There are community standards, property values, procedures to follow." The sweet smell of her expensive perfume mixed with the sour stench of desperation as she realized her empire had borders she couldn't cross. That's when I dropped the bomb that shattered her worldview into 1,000 pieces. "Actually, Dolly," I said, casually pulling the deed from my back pocket like a magician revealing the winning card, "I can buy whatever I want with my money. And this land?" I held up the document, letting afternoon sunlight catch the official seal. "Completely outside your jurisdiction. Agricultural zoning trumps your subdivision dictatorship." Her face cycled through emotions faster than a slot machine. Confusion, rage, calculation, then pure panic as reality hit. For 8 years, she'd never encountered anything she couldn't control, couldn't fine, couldn't bully into submission. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. No words came. Probably the first time in her adult life she'd been genuinely speechless. She spun on her designer heels and stormed off, her BMW engine screaming like a wounded animal as she peeled rubber down my street. "Game on, Your Majesty." Dolly's counterattacks arrived faster than pizza delivery on Super Bowl Sunday. Within 48 hours of my land purchase bombshell, she'd somehow discovered my driveway plans and mobilized her bureaucratic army. Monday morning, I'm savoring coffee and scrolling contractor quotes when my phone buzzes. Jerry from City Planning sounds like he's calling to report a death in the family. "Marcus, we've got a problem. Someone filed a complaint about your driveway project. Claims it'll destroy neighborhood character and bring agricultural traffic through residential streets." The rich aroma of breakfast bacon suddenly tasted like defeat. I could practically hear Dolly's victory cackle through the phone. "Let me guess, the complaint signature looks familiar. Can't say officially, but I've seen enough HOA documents to recognize the handwriting." Jerry's been battling Dolly's paper terrorism for years, his polite way of saying she's obviously behind it. She'd also rallied residents with a petition against commercial agricultural vehicles disrupting family-friendly environments. Never mind that my biggest planned vehicle was a pickup truck and maybe a small tractor for weekend zen gardening. But Dolly made a classic mistake. She assumed I'd play by her rules instead of finding entirely new game boards. I hired a professional surveyor armed with equipment that probably cost more than her BMW. This guy spent 2 days mapping every square inch, his electronic instruments beeping like R2-D2 having a conversation while morning dew sparkled on the grass around his tripod. The discovery was pure gold. My subdivision lot extended 15 feet further east than HOA maps showed. 15 beautiful feet that meant my driveway would sit entirely on my own property, requiring 0 permits for agricultural access. Years ago, I'd attended a mind-numbing zoning workshop where some bureaucrat droned about agricultural access roads bypassing municipal restrictions on private property. Who knew that boring afternoon would become my secret weapon? My construction crew was basically Dolly's greatest hits collection of victims seeking revenge. Big Mike got fined for parking his work truck in his own driveway. Carlos saw his landscaping business blacklisted after refusing Dolly's neighborhood discount demands. Tommy faced violations because his kid's basketball hoop was aesthetically disruptive. These guys approached my project like group therapy with heavy machinery. Work began at exactly 7 a.m., legal start time that maximized Dolly's morning suffering. The thunderous rumble of excavators mixed with diesel exhaust thick enough to taste, creating a blue-collar symphony that rattled windows throughout the subdivision. Each day brought delicious progress, earth-shaking excavation, gravel trucks blocking her jogging route, concrete forms screaming permanent installation. Dolly's response was beautifully predictable. Daily code enforcement complaints, all dismissed when inspectors confirmed legality. Failed attempts to tow legally parked work vehicles. Threats to sue workers, which just made them operate louder out of pure spite. My favorite moment came when she stationed herself at the property line with her iPhone, filming evidence like she was documenting war crimes. The crew started waving and flexing for her camera, turning her intimidation attempt into a comedy show that had neighbors laughing from their windows. The gate installation was my masterpiece. 8 feet of professional-grade steel with electronic keypads, security cameras, and solar-powered motion sensors. The metallic screech of welding mixed with the satisfying thunk-thunk-thunk of hydraulic post drivers anchoring everything in concrete deeper than her delusions of authority. When Dolly tried blocking installation by standing in front of work trucks like some suburban protest warrior, the crew simply worked around her. Her screeching about property values echoed off houses, while poor Roger had to drag her away before she earned herself an obstruction charge. Then came the moment that broke her brain completely. "Nice gate, Marcus," she sneered during her daily property line patrol, "but you can't monitor everything all the time." That's when I casually pulled out my phone and showed her the live camera feed. "Actually, Dolly, I can watch you lose your mind in real time from anywhere in the world. Motion sensors, cloud storage, remote control, the whole 9 yards. Welcome to the 21st century." Her face went through more color changes than a mood ring in a sauna. The realization that she was now under constant surveillance, that every tantrum would be documented and stored forever, hit her like a brick to the skull. She stood there opening and closing her mouth like a goldfish having an existential crisis, probably calculating how many times she'd already been recorded acting like a lunatic. That night, as my electronic gate clicked shut with a sound sweeter than church bells, I watched through my phone as Dolly sat in her BMW outside the fence, staring at 8 feet of steel that represented the end of her reign. Some people build bridges. I built a fortress, and she was on the wrong side of it. Dolly's next assault proved she'd officially entered tinfoil hat territory. Unable to control my property, she decided to weaponize social media like a suburban propaganda minister. Concerned citizens of Willowbrook materialized on Facebook overnight, complete with professional graphics and Dolly's headshot grinning like a political candidate. Her opening salvo was pure suburban horror, photos of my industrial fortress gate with apocalyptic captions about plummeting property values and agricultural invasion destroying family neighborhoods. The comment section became her digital therapy session. "What's next, cattle ranching?" shrieked one follower. "There goes our peaceful community," mourned another. She posted daily updates like a war correspondent, treating every delivery truck as evidence of my anti-social transformation of the area. But social media is trickier than Dolly's morning yoga routine, and twice as likely to backfire spectacularly. I launched Real Neighbors of Willowbrook that same afternoon, and within hours it was growing faster than her anxiety levels. Turns out people had stories brewing like coffee that's been sitting too long, dark, bitter, and ready to overflow. Mrs. Patterson posted photos of her modest bird feeding station alongside Dolly's $900 violation notice. The contrast was devastating. A sweet grandmother's backyard sanctuary versus bureaucratic cruelty typed on official letterhead. Comments exploded with similar horror stories. Fines for excessive holiday cheer, harassment for hosting book clubs, elderly neighbors bullied into $1,000 landscaping upgrades. Meanwhile, Dolly launched her infrastructure sabotage campaign. She'd discovered my utility plans and somehow convinced a city councilman, probably her Pilates instructor who owed her favors, to delay electrical service approval. Her official complaint claimed new power lines would create electromagnetic hazards for subdivision children. Rich irony from a woman who practically had her iPad surgically attached to her hands, but divorce had taught me valuable lessons about backup plans. While Dolly tangled herself in bureaucratic red tape, I was achieving complete energy independence that would make survivalists weep with joy. Solar installation began Thursday at sunrise, the crisp autumn air mixing with the smell of fresh lumber and possibility. 24 panels gleaming like mirrors caught morning light while workers hammered mounting brackets with rhythmic precision that sounded like freedom's drumbeat. Battery systems large enough to power a small village ensured I'd never need Dolly's precious grid again. Water independence came next. Agricultural exemptions allowed well drilling without residential permits that Dolly might sabotage. The drilling rig rumbled like a mechanical dragon boring through 80 feet of earth to reach sweet groundwater that belonged to no HOA. Composting toilets and gray water recycling completed my off-grid paradise. Dolly could control subdivision utilities all she wanted. She couldn't control the sun, rain, or my engineering stubbornness. Her recruitment campaign grew increasingly unhinged. Emergency community meetings in her spotless living room where she served wine that cost more than most car payments while spreading fear about property insurance and resale values. She actually offered to reduce HOA fees for supporters, literally bribing people with their own money. The whisper campaign turned venomous. Suspicious activities and antisocial behavior became her mantras, always delivered with that plastic smile that made my skin crawl like ants at a picnic. She hinted at insurance increases and mortgage complications, weaponizing financial anxiety against neighbors who'd done nothing wrong. But paranoia was rotting her judgment. Every interaction got recorded, every tantrum documented by my expanding security network that captured her descent into madness in crystal clear 4K resolution. The gate trap incident happened on a soggy Tuesday that smelled like earthworms and regret. A UPS driver delivering more solar equipment triggered my automatic gate system. Dolly, lurking nearby like a suburban vampire, tried slipping through behind the truck before the gate closed. She got caught like a mouse in the world's most expensive mousetrap. The driver used my back access road, leaving Dolly stranded on my property with 8 feet of steel between her and freedom. Security cameras captured every delicious moment, confusion melting into panic, then pure rage as she realized she was literally imprisoned by her own nosiness. I watched through my phone for 30 glorious minutes, savoring her expensive heels slipping on wet gravel while she stumbled around like a drunk penguin. Her face cycled through more colors than a sunset while she probably calculated potential trespassing charges. Here's the twist that broke the internet. I'd been live streaming the gate area 24/7 after neighbors begged for access to the Karen show. Thousands of viewers watched her humiliation unfold in real time, chat exploding with laughter and solidarity. When I finally opened the gate remotely, Dolly practically sprinted to her BMW like the property was on fire. Gate Karen Gets Trapped went viral within hours, shared faster than gossip at church potlucks. Comments poured in from 6 continents, people sharing HOA horror stories and cheering my resistance movement. Dolly remained blissfully unaware she'd become a global meme, but her empire was crumbling one viral moment at a time. The manila envelope appeared in my mailbox Wednesday morning like a message from the resistance, thick with secrets and smelling faintly of desperation mixed with copy machine toner. No return address, just my name written in careful block letters that screamed, "Burn after reading." Inside were photocopied HOA board meeting minutes dating back 3 years, each page more explosive than a congressional corruption hearing. Someone with access to Dolly's inner circle had decided to detonate her empire from within. The financial scandal was so brazen it made Enron look subtle. Meeting minutes revealed the HOA had collected over $50,000 in violation fines last year. Money earmarked for community improvements, like the playground renovation that never happened, and street repaving that existed only in residents' dreams. Instead, Dolly had funneled every dollar through a family business network that would impress cartel accountants. Her brother-in-law's premier landscaping solutions received $28,000 for phantom maintenance that no neighbor had ever witnessed. Cousin Eddie's neighborhood security services collected $15,000 for patrols as mythical as unicorns. But the discrimination pattern was the real smoking gun that made my blood boil. Dolly's handwritten notes, chicken scratch that revealed her rotten soul, documented systematic targeting of families who didn't fit her suburban master race vision. The Garcias faced harassment for culturally inappropriate decorations, meaning their beautiful Virgin Mary garden statue. The Johnsons, our subdivision's only black family, got hit with everything from excessive basketball noise to non-conforming paint colors that matched 3 white neighbors' houses perfectly. 3 families had been literally driven out by accumulated fines and constant harassment, forced to sell at devastating losses, while Dolly's handpicked replacements moved in. Her notes included property value calculations and timelines for neighborhood improvement through strategic turnover. My phone rang at exactly 10 p.m., cutting through evening silence like a confession waiting to escape. "Marcus? This is Roger Pemberton. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, Dolly's husband sat in my kitchen looking like a man who'd been drowning slowly for years. His hands trembled around my coffee mug while the rich aroma mixed with the sour smell of fear radiating from his pores. "I sent those documents," he whispered, eyes darting toward windows like Dolly might materialize from shadows. "I've been copying everything for months, praying someone brave enough would use them." The story that spilled out was heartbreaking and terrifying. 20 years of watching his wife transform from perfectionist to full-blown community dictator. She controlled every penny of household finances and threatened divorce whenever he questioned her HOA activities. He'd been exiled to the guest bedroom for 2 years, too scared of her volcanic temper to resist. His breaking point came when Dolly targeted Mrs. Remy, an 85-year-old widow whose crime was failing to edge her sidewalk to military precision. Watching his wife torture a grieving grandmother over grass height finally showed Roger he'd married a sociopath. "She keeps detailed journals," he continued, voice cracking like autumn leaves. "Plans for expanding violations, lists of undesirable residents, strategies for forced relocations. Everything documented in her own handwriting like she's proud of destroying lives." Additional financial records revealed personal use of HOA funds for family vacations, home renovations, and shopping sprees disguised as administrative expenses. The embezzlement totaled over $80,000, enough for every community improvement residents had begged for. The evidence was a nuclear weapon pointed at Dolly's empire. Criminal fraud, civil rights violations, conspiracy, tax evasion. She'd built a house of cards in a hurricane, and I held the matches. But power brought impossible choices. Private revenge would protect only me. Public justice would help victims but endanger Roger's safety. The moral weight pressed down like summer humidity. Staring at boxes of evidence that could topple a tyrant, I realized this transcended property rights. I'd become an accidental champion for victims who deserved better. The war had evolved from personal to righteous. The next morning, I dialed the number for legal revenge incarnate. Sarah Blackwood, the attorney who'd made destroying corrupt HOAs her personal crusade against suburban tyranny. Sarah's office smelled like aged leather and pure determination. Walls lined with framed newspaper clippings documenting her victories against municipal corruption. She'd abandoned a lucrative prosecutor career after watching too many white-collar criminals buy their freedom, now dedicating her life to crushing institutional bullies who thought laws were suggestions. "Holy shit," she breathed, spreading Rogers' documents across her mahogany desk like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Dolly didn't just commit fraud. She gift-wrapped a federal RICO case with her own confession letters. The legal strategy was poetry, written in lawsuit language, civil action targeting Dolly personally, the HOA Corporation, and every family member who'd touched stolen money. Criminal referral package ready for district attorney review. IRS notification prepared for tax fraud investigation. State Real Estate Commission complaint for unauthorized fee collection. Sarah had learned during her prosecutor days that pattern evidence destroys even the best defense attorneys. Knowledge that would make Dolly's expensive lawyer earn every billable hour. Building our victim coalition felt like assembling the Avengers of suburban oppression. Evening meetings at St. Mary's Church basement, neutral ground where Dolly's spy network couldn't penetrate, brought together 12 families whose American dreams she'd systematically shredded. The stories hit harder than morning coffee without cream. Maria Santos sobbed, describing how violation fines forced impossible choices between groceries and mortgage payments. Her husband worked double shifts while Maria cleaned houses until midnight, all to pay penalties for excessive children's toys, visible from their own front yard. Vietnam veteran Tom Bradley lost his retirement savings fighting $3,200 in landscaping violations before surrendering and moving in with his daughter. His crime? Dandelions in his backyard that required trespassing to photograph, exactly the kind of selective enforcement that makes federal prosecutors salivate. The Hendersons, exhausted parents of newborn twins, faced $1,800 for diaper disposal odors that Dolly claimed violated atmospheric quality standards. They'd installed commercial-grade air filtration systems that still didn't satisfy her vindictive nose. Each testimony fueled my rage like premium gasoline on an open flame. These weren't violations. They were calculated cruelties designed to break spirits and empty bank accounts of families who'd done nothing wrong. Digital forensics expert Jake Morrison arrived with equipment that could resurrect deleted files like digital necromancy. His analysis revealed hidden bank accounts, suspicious vendor payments, and fake invoices for phantom services that existed only in Dolly's imagination and her brother-in-law's billing software. The paper trail was devastating. Email threads between board members planning enforcement campaigns against specific residents. Meeting notes discussing fine maximization strategies. Communications revealing coded language about community standards that was really discrimination with a legal thesaurus. Rogers' expanded cooperation provided the nuclear evidence that would obliterate any defense strategy. Access to Dolly's home computer revealed years of targeting based on race, age, and economic status, civil rights violations that could trigger Department of Justice intervention. Meanwhile, I legitimized my agricultural operation to bulletproof our legal position. 5 acres of organic vegetables, heritage breed chickens, and honeybee colonies that would make my property genuinely productive. The beautiful irony was that Dolly's harassment had accidentally created the exact farming operation she'd falsely claimed to oppose. Local investigative reporter Jennifer Mills joined our crusade after Sarah's introduction. Jennifer had toppled corrupt mayors and exposed embezzling school boards, earning death threats from politicians and Pulitzer nominations from journalism societies. She agreed to embargo the story until our legal nuclear strike launched. Technical preparation was methodical as surgery. Professional videographer contracted for maximum documentation quality. Military-grade audio recording systems tested for courtroom admissibility. Legal papers prepared for immediate service after public humiliation. Sheriff's Department received advance warning about our upcoming confrontation. Deputy Martinez, who'd endured years of Dolly's false police reports, volunteered for crowd control duty with barely concealed glee radiating from his weathered face. Community organizing required NSA-level secrecy. Encrypted phone trees connected sympathetic neighbors. Coded messages coordinated maximum attendance at the upcoming board meeting. Victims rehearsed their testimony until every word carried maximum emotional impact. Late-night strategy sessions in my kitchen became war councils fueled by greasy Chinese takeout and the intoxicating taste of approaching justice. Battle maps spread across my table showed property boundaries, camera coverage, and emergency exits if Dolly's supporters turned violent. Rogers' intelligence updates revealed Dolly's deteriorating mental state, 3 hours sleep nightly, increasing paranoia about outside agitators, journal entries describing fantasies of eliminating troublemakers permanently. Her desperation was accelerating mistakes that would guarantee her destruction. Final preparations covered every contingency. Criminal prosecution, if prosecutors moved aggressively. Civil trial if she fought inevitability. Media circus if national news discovered our story. Settlement negotiations if she tried purchasing absolution. The trap was constructed with engineering precision. Every wire connected, every trigger tested, every explosive charge positioned for maximum damage. All we needed was for Dolly to step inside. Dolly's desperation reached new heights when Roger accidentally let slip that the next board meeting would have unusually high attendance. The poor man tried covering his mistake, but damage was done. Dolly's paranoia shifted into overdrive like an engine redlining before it explodes. Her first move was pure criminal stupidity. At 2:17 a.m. on a moonless Tuesday, my motion sensors triggered every floodlight on the property, illuminating Dolly crouched beside my gate with a crowbar like some suburban cat burglar having a midlife crisis. Security cameras captured everything in glorious 4K detail. Her designer workout clothes, the borrowed crowbar from Roger's garage, even her muttered threats about teaching that bastard a lesson he'll never forget. The automatic cloud backup ensured evidence preservation that not even the best cybercriminals could erase. But here's where my engineering patience paid dividends that would make Warren Buffett jealous. Instead of calling police immediately, I chose strategic restraint, building an airtight criminal case while she dug her legal grave deeper with each desperate act. The edited footage, carefully scrubbed of audio that might identify Roger, went viral faster than food poisoning at a church potluck. Gate Karen Tries Vandalism hit social media at sunrise, shared across platforms by thousands of people living their own HOA horror stories. Dolly's public meltdown was spectacular entertainment. Facebook posts claiming invasion of privacy and selective editing, while insisting she was conducting safety inspections at 2 a.m. Each rant made her appear more unhinged than a screen door in a hurricane, comment sections exploding with mockery from strangers worldwide. Then came the bribery attempt that proved desperation had officially murdered her common sense. Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang to reveal Janet Morrison, neighborhood busybody and Dolly's longtime ally, clutching a manila envelope like she was delivering nuclear launch codes. "Dolly asked me to give you this," Janet whispered, glancing around nervously as if CIA surveillance drones were monitoring suburban cash transactions. "She wants to resolve things peacefully, return to normal neighborly relations." Inside was $10,000 in crisp hundreds, money that forensic accounting would later trace directly to HOA violation accounts through serial number analysis that would impress Treasury investigators. The accompanying note offered payment in exchange for gate removal and my commitment to peaceful coexistence. I'd learned during a white-collar crime seminar that attempted bribery often indicates criminals realize they're cornered, knowledge that made this moment particularly sweet. But I wasn't done documenting Dolly's criminal expansion. Janet, shaking like a chihuahua in a thunderstorm, admitted Dolly had offered her $500 to deliver the envelope and claim ignorance if questioned. Poor Janet had unknowingly become an accessory to attempted bribery, recorded confession and all. Meanwhile, my good neighbor initiative was transforming community perception faster than Dolly could destroy it. Saturday farmers markets drew hundreds of visitors who sampled organic produce while listening to neighbors share stories of HOA harassment that would make civil rights lawyers weep. The contrast was devastating, my property showcasing community building and agricultural education while Dolly's desperate schemes revealed petty corruption and criminal behavior. Local news crews started attending markets, initially for feel-good agriculture stories, but staying for corruption expose material. Dolly's false police report campaign reached ridiculous proportions. Weekly calls claiming I was threatening her by existing, stalking her by driving past her house to reach my own gate, creating health hazards through organic farming that attracted beneficial insects to the area. Each false report got carefully documented by increasingly annoyed police officers who were building their own file of Dolly's abuse of emergency services, misdemeanor charges that would pile onto her growing legal troubles like snow in an avalanche. The code enforcement harassment escalated to comedy gold when Dolly convinced some spineless city employee to conduct weekly agricultural violation inspections based on anonymous complaints that everyone knew originated from her paranoid brain. Inspector Williams, a patient man who dealt with worse nonsense than suburban drama queens, found 0 violations during each visit while documenting the pattern of harassment that would become exhibit evidence in federal civil rights proceedings. "Ma'am," he finally told her during one particularly ridiculous complaint about my composting system, "organic agriculture is legal, beneficial, and none of your damn business. Stop calling unless someone's actually dead." Roger's psychological state deteriorated as Dolly's behavior became increasingly erratic. 3 hours of sleep nightly, obsessive gate surveillance, detailed journals documenting imaginary plots against her authority that read like conspiracy theories written by someone having a nervous breakdown. His breaking point came when she demanded he install surveillance cameras aimed at my property, illegal stalking that could result in felony charges if implemented. Roger secretly provided her journal entries revealing plans for escalating enforcement that sounded more like terrorist manifestos than HOA correspondence. The community sentiment shift was total and irreversible. Former supporters abandoned Dolly's sinking ship, distancing themselves from her increasingly criminal behavior while publicly supporting my agricultural initiative and victim advocacy efforts. Even her closest allies recognized that association with her corruption investigation would destroy their own reputations faster than a social media scandal. The stage was set for final confrontation. Dolly's final gambit proved she'd completely lost touch with reality and basic human decency. Unable to destroy my property or reputation through normal channels, she hired a private investigator to excavate my past like some discount detective novel villain. The PI showed up asking neighbors about my suspicious activities and concerning behavior patterns. He contacted my ex-wife, former employers, even my college roommates, fishing for dirt that might justify Dolly's harassment campaign. The poor bastard had no idea he was building evidence for her eventual prosecution. But karma works in mysterious ways that would make philosophers weep with joy. The investigator, let's call him Jack Hammer because that's apparently a real name people give their children, discovered Dolly's criminal enterprise during his background research. Professional ethics and self-preservation instincts kicked in simultaneously when he realized his client was under federal investigation for fraud and civil rights violations. Jack contacted Sarah's office Tuesday morning, voice shaking like autumn leaves as he negotiated immunity in exchange for testimony about Dolly's attempts to fabricate evidence against me. Turns out she'd offered bonus payment for creative interpretations of my divorce records and employment history. The backfire was spectacular. My professional network rallied around me faster than first responders to emergencies. Colleagues and former employers provided glowing character references that made Dolly's smear campaign look like jealous gossip from someone with serious mental health issues. My ex-wife, who'd cheated with our financial advisor, remember, actually defended me to the investigator, saying our divorce was amicable and I'd been generous to a fault during settlement negotiations. Even she thought Dolly's fishing expedition was pathetic and inappropriate. Meanwhile, Dolly's media manipulation strategy exploded in her face like cheap fireworks. She'd leaked selective security footage to Channel 7 News, editing clips to make my agricultural operation look threatening and industrial rather than peaceful and educational. The plan backfired when reporter Jessica Santos, no relation to our victim Maria, investigated deeper and uncovered the fraud evidence that Sarah had been preparing. Instead of a hit piece on my dangerous agricultural encroachment, Jessica produced an expose on HOA corruption that made Dolly look like a suburban mob boss. Roger's final evidence dump was the nuclear option that obliterated any remaining defense strategy. Complete access to Dolly's home office computer revealed email communications with board members planning coordinated harassment campaigns, financial software showing personal use of HOA funds for family vacations, and calendar entries scheduling enforcement actions against specific residents like military operations. The smoking gun was her communication with co-conspirator board members discussing how to maximize fine collection while avoiding legal challenges, conspiracy evidence that would make prosecutors absolutely giddy with anticipation. 3 remaining board members resigned immediately after learning about the evidence, publicly distancing themselves from Dolly's criminal enterprise while issuing statements about being deceived and manipulated by her false financial reports. Emergency board meetings were called to remove Dolly from all positions, but she refused to attend, barricading herself in her house like some suburban dictator facing revolutionary justice. Roger moved out that weekend, citing safety concerns for his own well-being as Dolly's paranoia reached dangerous levels. My agricultural expansion became the perfect contrast to her implosion. Community garden programs launched with local school partnerships, providing hands-on education about sustainable farming while employing neighborhood teenagers in meaningful work that built character and bank accounts simultaneously. The farmers market evolved into a regional destination, attracting visitors from 3 counties who came for organic produce but stayed for the inspiring story of community resistance against institutional corruption. Local businesses sponsored expanded programs while media coverage portrayed my initiative as grassroots democracy in action. Dolly's isolation became total and pathetic. Former supporters crossed streets to avoid conversations. Neighbors pretended not to see her during grocery store encounters, and even service providers started refusing her business after word spread about potential legal complications. Her last-ditch harassment attempt was organizing a peaceful protest of my Saturday farmers market with her remaining 3 supporters, basically a failed flash mob that attracted more counter-protesters than participants. The optics were devastating. 4 bitter people holding misspelled signs while hundreds of families enjoyed fresh produce and community fellowship. The protest footage went viral for all the wrong reasons. Comments sections exploded with mockery about her army of Karen, while social media algorithms spread the video to millions of viewers who shared their own stories of HOA tyranny and neighborhood bullying. Anonymous tips flooded district attorney offices, federal authorities, and investigative journalists as my story inspired others to report their own experiences with corrupt homeowner associations across multiple states. Dolly had accidentally sparked a nationwide movement against HOA abuse. The final confrontation was scheduled for Thursday's board meeting, the last meeting she would ever control, though she didn't know it yet. Legal papers were prepared, media alerted, and victims ready to share their stories publicly for the first time. Everything was in position for Dolly's spectacular public downfall. All that remained was pulling the trigger on the biggest suburban justice bomb in HOA history. The reckoning was coming, and she had no idea what was about to hit her. Thursday night arrived like Christmas morning for anyone who'd ever been screwed by petty authority. The HOA Community Center, normally host to bingo nights and potluck dinners, was packed tighter than a New York subway car during rush hour. Over 200 people crammed into a room designed for maybe 50, with overflow crowds spilling into the parking lot where speakers broadcast the audio to cars full of popcorn-munching spectators. Channel 7's news van sat prominently by the entrance, camera crew setting up like they were covering election results. The smell of nervous sweat mixed with cheap coffee and anticipation thick enough to cut with a knife. Sheriff's deputies flanked the exits, ostensibly for crowd control but clearly excited to watch Dolly's empire crumble in real time. Sarah Blackwood sat in the front row with her briefcase of evidence, looking like a prosecutor who'd just been handed a confession written in crayon. Roger huddled nearby, pale as fresh snow but determined to finally speak his truth after 20 years of silence. Dolly entered at exactly 7 p.m., her usual power walk replaced by the cautious shuffle of someone walking through a minefield. She'd clearly sensed something was wrong. The massive crowd, media presence, and general atmosphere of barely contained celebration weren't typical for routine board meetings. "This meeting will come to order," she announced, voice wavering like she was trying to convince herself she still held authority. "Due to fire code violations, I'm limiting attendance to residents in good standing only." The crowd's laughter was immediate and merciless. Someone shouted, "You mean people who haven't been fined for breathing wrong?" which triggered another wave of applause that made Dolly's face redden like a thermometer in hell. "Furthermore," she continued desperately, "media presence is unauthorized. This is a private community meeting." That's when Jessica Santos stood up with her press credentials. "Actually, HOA meetings are public forums under state law when they involve community funds. We're staying." The first victim testimony came from Maria Santos, no relation to the reporter, whose emotional account of choosing between groceries and violation payments had grown men wiping their eyes. Her voice shook as she described working multiple jobs to pay fines for children's toys being visible from the street. Dolly interrupted with increasing desperation. "These complaints are unsubstantiated, taken out of context, clearly coordinated by outside agitators attempting to—" "Shut up, Dolly." The voice belonged to Tom Bradley, the Vietnam veteran she'd bankrupted over backyard dandelions. The entire room erupted in cheers as the 75-year-old man slowly stood, his walker scraping against the floor. "You destroyed my retirement savings over weeds that nobody could see without trespassing on my property. 30 years I paid HOA fees and you stole every penny for your family's vacation fund." That's when Sarah stood up, briefcase clicking open like a gunslinger drawing iron. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sarah Blackwood, representing 12 families in a class action lawsuit against this HOA and Mrs. Pemberton personally." She began laying out financial documents on the projector table, each page a nail in Dolly's legal coffin. These bank records show systematic embezzlement totaling $80,000, with funds diverted to family businesses for services never performed, landscaping contracts with her brother-in-law for phantom maintenance, security services from her cousin for patrols that exist only on paper. Dolly's face went through more color changes than a mood ring in a blender. "This is illegal invasion of privacy. Those documents were obtained illegally." "Actually," Roger said, standing slowly with documents trembling in his weathered hands. "I provided them voluntarily. 20 years of watching you destroy families was enough." The crowd's gasp was audible as Dolly's husband, her enabler and shield for 2 decades, turned against her publicly. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "You're all witnesses to elder abuse!" she shrieked, pointing at Roger with shaking fingers. "He's mentally incompetent, being manipulated by these criminals." That's when I stood up for my mic drop moment, the words I'd been practicing for weeks. "The only criminal here, Dolly, is you. Fraud, embezzlement, civil rights violations, tax evasion, and now we have it all documented in your own handwriting, captured on security cameras, and confirmed by bank records. Your reign of suburban terror is over." The room exploded into standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes, while Dolly stood frozen like a deer in headlights. Camera flashes popped like strobe lights as photographers captured her complete psychological collapse in high-definition detail. Deputy Martinez approached with arrest warrant in hand, his satisfied smile visible even from across the crowded room. "Dolores Pemberton, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through suddenly silent space as 20 years of accumulated karma finally came due. Justice had arrived, and it tasted sweeter than my grandmother's apple pie. Today marks exactly 1 year since Dolly's handcuffs clicked shut, and I'm watching children harvest tomatoes where her tyranny once poisoned our community. The transformation is nothing short of miraculous. The sweet smell of fresh basil mingles with children's laughter as third graders learn about sustainable farming in what used to be Dolly's kingdom of fear. Their dirty hands and bright smiles remind me why fighting corruption was worth every sleepless night and legal bill. Justice moved swiftly once the dam broke. Dolly pleaded guilty to fraud and embezzlement, earning 18 months in federal prison plus full restitution to every family she'd victimized. Her brother-in-law and cousin accepted plea deals, forced to repay every stolen dollar while watching their fraudulent businesses collapse like dominoes in an earthquake. Our class action lawsuit settled for $250,000 plus legal fees, ensuring every victim received compensation exceeding their losses. Maria Santos used her settlement to launch a catering business that now supplies our farmers market with tamales so incredible they've achieved legendary status among weekend visitors. Tom Bradley, the Vietnam veteran she'd financially destroyed over backyard dandelions, got his retirement savings back with interest and became our community historian. His backyard now blooms with wildflowers that serve as a beautiful monument to freedom from arbitrary authority. The HOA transformation was revolutionary. New bylaws mandated independent financial oversight, board term limits, and actual due process for violations. Monthly meetings became genuine community discussions where residents plan real improvements instead of enduring dictatorial pronouncements about phantom projects. Roger found peace in a senior community where abuse counselors helped him rediscover the man Dolly's psychological terrorism had buried for 20 years. He visits monthly to teach soil science to children with the patience of someone who's finally found his voice again. My agricultural operation exceeded every dream I'd harbored during those dark early days. 40 acres now feed 3 farmers markets while employing 15 neighbors in meaningful work that builds community rather than dividing it through fear and manufactured crises. The Education Center hosts field trips for 6 school districts, teaching children about sustainable farming and the importance of standing up to bullies who abuse their positions. Watching 8-year-olds plant seeds while learning about justice gives me hope for America's future. We established the Ezra Whitfield Agricultural Education Scholarship, using proceeds from my book about the experience. Our first recipient was Maria's daughter, Elena, now studying agricultural science with plans to return and expand community programs that prove cooperation beats corruption every time. Media attention spawned a PBS documentary about property rights and community resistance that aired nationally, generating thousands of calls from HOA abuse victims seeking advice about fighting back against institutional bullying that destroys lives and bank accounts. I became an unexpected advocate for HOA reform, speaking at government meetings about homeowner protection while helping draft legislation preventing future Dollys from wielding unchecked power over vulnerable families trying to build decent lives. Our farmers market evolved into an annual Freedom Festival, celebrating community resilience. This year drew 2,000 visitors who came for organic produce but stayed for live music, children's activities, and inspiring proof that ordinary people can create extraordinary change when they refuse to accept injustice. Property values increased 15% since corruption's exposure, demonstrating that genuine community improvement works infinitely better than manufactured problems designed to benefit family businesses at residents' expense. Sarah and I discovered our partnership extended beyond legal strategy during those intense planning sessions. Our relationship blossomed like heritage tomatoes in rich soil, and she continues fighting HOA corruption, while I focus on agricultural education and inspiring others to resist institutional abuse. The gate still stands but opens during daylight hours, welcoming visitors to acres where children's laughter has replaced Dolly's poisonous threats. A new sign reads, "Community welcome, education and healing happen here," representing transformation that seemed impossible just 12 months ago. Every sunrise, I walk through vegetable rows, breathing air that tastes like freedom, possibility, and the incredible satisfaction of justice served at exactly the perfect temperature. Got your own HOA nightmare? Share it in the comments. Corruption thrives in darkness but dies when exposed to community sunlight. Smash that subscribe button because next week's story about the city councilwoman who tried destroying our farmers market will blow your mind. Remember, the gate stays open but the principles it represents grow stronger every day.